Everybody, welcome you back to Cliff's Corner. Um, right there. There's something that's on my mind. I'm not going to be online long, but something that's on my mind right now is with me developing this COPET method, which stands for Composer Oriented Performance Expression and Technique Method for pianists. Um, it's making me think like, what type of pianist am I helping, right? You know, I always saw it from an angle of I'm helping pianists who are intermediate to lower advanced level pianists, musicians who are stuck and want a new way to learn how to learn technique through composition, right? That's the core of it, right? Because of the fact that the traditional sense of learning piano, it's it's you learn a technique through drilling, right? Constantly work on this drill and stuff like that, and then you develop enough talent to go to a piece and play that specific technique, which is cool to a certain point. But then let's say you play another piece that doesn't have this technique anymore. Let's say in this piece here, it was working on scales and stuff like that, right? And then the next piece you're working on arpeggios, right? Sometimes somewhere along the way you might lose your scales technique, right? Because that's happened to me. That's happened to like a lot of different pianists that I know. So then I started composing while working on scales through my own storytelling, right? I would literally write out a story, or I would think of a story actually, and that later on I started writing out stories. But most part, mostly I would think of a story in my head of, okay, I wanted, how am I going to use scales to depict this story? Whether it was something personal I went through or not, it was just, okay, how do I develop this? How am I going to, you know? And what I ended up realizing was that that helped my technique to get better, whether it's scales or arpeggios, whatever. But I was also developing my artistry at the piano. This all of this was happening before I started formal lessons, and also during while I was in formal lessons. Did that for 3 years, inform like teaching myself, and then 8 years I was in formal lessons, whatever. And so basically, when I developed this COPET method, which is recently developing this, it was something that I had practiced years ago when I first started playing piano, and it helped me composing with these different techniques. Helped my technique to get so much better in a shorter amount of time, as well as develop my artistry, because I was being able to become one with this technique that I was working on. It was not separate. It wasn't separate from the artistry part, you know. Of course, you have the traditional sense of how do you do octaves, right? If you don't have the foundation, then you cannot shape the melodic line however you want it to shape it, right? If you don't have the foundation, right? So of course, you work on how do you do octaves, prevent tension here and here. What's the formula, right? Okay, boom. Then once we develop the different type of techniques, then it's okay. Now you start composing something small and not necessarily writing things down, right? Because that's a different type of skill that I do teach as well. But even if you don't come up with something short, or think of something that happened with you, somebody that you love, or something sad that happened in your life, and now you're using this technique that you've been working on to tell a story through this technique. And when you do that, you accomplish two things: you develop your artistry, which is the most important thing, as well as the technique. And then in the long term, it sticks with you even more, as opposed to, your traditional sense of, all right, you learn a piece, right, that has this technique, right? After the piece is done, you mastered it, you whatever, boom, boom, boom. You go to the next piece. You go to the next piece, and what if you're not playing a piece that has arpeggios for your next 10 pieces, right? Now, of course, the counter to that is, well, this is why you should always be doing drills on a daily, scales, arpeggios, etc., etc. But the thing with that repetitive work is that it becomes boring after a while. There has to be some type of variation. I'm not saying that the work is not important, but once you've become seasoned with the work, this is why, like, my everything I'm talking about is mostly for intermediate to lower advanced level pianists, not more so beginners. But once you become seasoned with the work, you've been practicing, drilling in traditional sense. After a while, it becomes boring. So what's the solution? Most people will do is they'll stop practicing these drills on a daily, right? Because they don't want to go through that. It's boring, right? And then when it comes back around to, okay, a piece that has arpeggios that you haven't been practicing the technique, now you have to kill so many birds with one stone. You have to now redevelop the technique of arpeggios. You have to also understand what the pianist wants, right? And you also have to put emotion and all that other stuff with it. But that's creating more work than is necessary. If you are composing with these techniques, it becomes second nature to you here and here. So that now, when it comes to a Chopin ballad or a Brahms concerto, and you see a whole entire page of octaves, oh, that's second nature to me because I've already been composing with octaves. I've already been doing a whole bunch of stuff with these octaves, whether it's chromaticism, whether it's staccato, martellatissimo octaves. It doesn't matter. I've been working with these different type of octaves. So now, when it comes down to the um the piece that you want to learn, oh, it starts to click more, right? And I'm telling you, that has helped so many pianists. I've helped so many pianists with this method. I've helped myself with this method so much, even in today's time. I'll give you an example. I know I told the story before. I was working on for years. For years, I was working on Franz Liszt's um, Reminiscences de Norma, specifically the arpeggio part, and I could not get it for whatever reason. I just could not, I could not get it at all. And then simultaneously, I was working on another piece that I composed, based off of Franz Liszt, Overture to Tannhauser. And there's a part where I changed up a part of Liszt's original part, right? I made my part and I made it all arpeggios. And lo and behold, as I'm practicing these arpeggios from the Overture to Tannhauser, my transcription with these arpeggios, I began to put two and two together. That the arpeggios that I was working on offer something that I composed, which is dedicated to two very important people in my life, my mom and my grandmother, right? Arpeggios that I'm working on, that I changed from Liszt's original writing, is now helping me with the arpeggios from Norma. And that's all through the COPET method, right? Compose a piece, compose or improvise over a piece, or make my own transcription of a piece based off of two people who mean the world to me. My grandmother, who passed this past February 15th, and my mom, who I love and hold dear to my heart. And that's more than enough of a story right there, right? Something I composed, two people that I love and influenced me and helped me to compose a piece, to work on a specific technique, which is arpeggios, which also connected to a piece that I was working on of Liszt, Reminiscences de Norma. You see how it all goes hand in hand, right? Now the reservations, is that the correct word? Reservations. It's not the reservations. The rebuttals. Let's say that. I think it's reservations the word, but the rebuttal to this might be, well, what if I don't know what to compose, right? What if I don't know what to do? And then this is what I tell people: listen to John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Listen to that piece and listen to the piece and listen to what's around you. And then come back to me with your saying, Mr. Cliff, what if I don't know how to compose? Come back with your answer. And then sometimes most people, I should say, they understand what I'm saying, right? And then there's some people who are like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't understand. And so I'm go back and listen. 4 minutes and 33 seconds has no music at all. If you ever see a recording, a live performance of it, the ones that I've seen, it's a full orchestra. It's 4 movements long, and the conductor is standing there. He goes 1, 2, as if for everybody to start playing, and nobody plays. And it's like the purpose of that piece is to get people to understand that music is anything and everything around you. The sound of my voice that you're hearing right now is music. That plane that you hear back there is music. The people's voices is music. So once you start understanding that music is anything and everything around you, it takes the pressure off of you as a musician, as a pianist, to compose music. Because anything and everything is music. We have to get out of this mindset of what society deems as perfect, as what is good. You know what I mean? We have to get out of that because it's not fair to the musician, to the composer. We have to get out of the mindset of if it's music that we have here, that if it doesn't sound like this and it doesn't look like this and it doesn't, it's not as fast as this, then you are not as good. Who's anybody to tell somebody else how good or bad they are when it comes to this high level music that people play? But you see, this is the thing. I'm gonna talk out of two different mouths, if that makes sense, right? The beauty, the same thing that I'm against, there's a beautiful side of it because it's so subjective. The bad part about subjectivity is that when it becomes violent, when people can't have an honest respect between each other about what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, right? But that's not the world we live in, right? we have our opinions and stuff like that. But long story short, what I'm basically saying is this: my COPET method is game changing. And like the students that I have in my boot camp right now, I'm developing them into some amazing pianists. Amazing pianists. Like some of the compositions are really interesting. you know, because taking the pressure off of what a composer is and just tap into what's in here and here and let it come out. One more thing I would say, every scale has a different emotion tied to it. Every scale has a different emotion and color tied to it. When you think of emotions on the surface level, we think of happy, sad, angry, afraid, or angry, or curious, right? But in music, this is the most beautiful thing. Every scale, different scales can mean the same thing, just a different branch of what happiness is, or confused, or and it's like, that's why it's so important to learn your scales and learn your keys. Learn your keys. Learn A major, the relative major and minor, and harmonic and melodic minor scales. And it's so important because there's so many things that you can do to create. If you understand your scales and the keys and things like that, then when it comes to creating the thoughts and thoughts and memories that live in here and here, oh, through storytelling, oh, it just flows, you know. And I went this on this tangent just now, this last little segment just now, because I know that there's a lot of people who feel like you don't, it's not necessary or mandatory for people to learn music theory. Music is meant to be exploratory. Yes, I agree to a certain point. When you have the skills, you're able to learn things faster. There's not days where you're going to hit your head on the wall. You don't have as much frustration because of the fact that you have the skill, you have the techniques, you have the foundation. Because at the end of the day, in anything, if you don't have a solid foundation, when adversity happens, you're gonna fall apart. To make it even more sense, you can have all the skill in the world, but if you don't have a solid foundation behind it, when that skill dwindles or you have a lapse, you're gonna fall flat on your face because there's no foundation. For example, I'll tell you two stories. I've said this story before. First story is gonna be a music story, and the second one is gonna be about boxing, boxing and sports and things like that. All right, so the music story. So one of my colleagues, Mr. Burnett, Mr. David, um, he told me a story when I was like 17 years old that he did a gig for Luther Vandross in the 80s, right? They hired a violinist, violist. He's a violinist, pianist, and some other people, some whatever. It's like a whole string section, whatever. So they start rehearsal to, and it's like, wait a minute, somebody's off. All right, we start again. Somebody's off. Lo and behold, it was the pianist that was off. He played by ear, could not read the music. Guess what they did? Sir, we have to let you go. And they were paying you a lot of money to be there for that gig. Sir, we have to let you go. Thank you for your services. And then less than like a half hour, they got somebody new who could do the music. Right. So, what's the moral of this? Musicians, when you don't have some type of foundation, I'm not saying you should be able to read and play like on some super classical stuff like like me or whatever, but if you don't understand how to read at least some of the music, you could miss out on huge opportunities. When you don't know how to read some foundation of music, or understand theory of music, at least the basic form of it, when you don't do that, then You slow down the automation of of your creative process. You hit walls. You hit your head on the wall. You get more and more frustrated because you don't have some type of foundation. The more foundation you have, the more rules you can break. There's a lot of musicians who want to break the rules and feel like, oh, I don't need to learn foundation. I just want to do whatever I want to do. And they want to be innovators, which is all great and all that. But then they get frustrated when their head hits the wall and they can't get out what's in here. They can't tell the story that lives in here and here because they don't have that connection. Skills equals freedom. Skills equals freedom. So that's the first story. Now, the second story about the importance of having foundation is about boxing. Boxing is one of my favorite sports, besides basketball. Who we start with? We're gonna start with the one of the greatest boxers of all time, Muhammad Ali. If you saw how Muhammad Ali's what you call it ended, and you saw how it ended, his career ended, then you know that like he went out sad. The reason why he got hit so much towards the end of his career is because he did not have the legs that he had when he was younger. Standing in the corner, taking punishment, doing a peekaboo defense is cool and all to a certain point because you're tiring out your opponent, but you're still taking too much damage. And it's like, bro, if you have foundation, if you have better defense, if you had foundation, along with the athleticism and the uncanny ability to dodge and hit and not get hit with your hands down while you dancing around the ring. Oh man. Even even though like he lost 3 years of his boxing career due to some bullshit, he would have been even more solid. Let's take another fighter. Let's take Floyd Mayweather, the greatest boxer of all time. The reason why he's the great is because he knew he knew that at a certain point of his career he had to switch things up and no longer take the chances that he used to take. He had to become more defensive. And I can remember specifically when that transition happened. It was after he fought Miguel Cotto. That was the last time you seen Floyd really take damage like that. He started to become. I was actually a little bit before that. Actually, no, he was still Miguel Cotto. That fight is when after subsequent fights after that, you started to see him become even more defensive, hit and not get hit. He was always like that in his career, but when he was younger, he was a knockout artist. He would take more chances, but then things started to slow down for him as far as looking for the knockout after he fought Arturo Gatti, who he whooped his ass. But the thing is that hitting Arturo Gatti was like hitting stone, so he was really hurt his hands. So he started to have issues with his hands. So he became more defensive minded. But that Cotto fight was a tough fight for him. Even though he beat him unanimously, that's when you start seeing him like, okay, yeah, let me start becoming more defensive. And as he got older, the point I'm trying to make is this: because he has such a solid foundation, a beyond solid foundation, in defense, he could have boxed another 8 years after he retired if he wanted to, because he's not going to get hit like that, because he has a solid foundation. And the solid foundation when he was younger allowed him to take as many chances as he wanted, leap in, throw a whole bunch of combinations and get out of the way, a lead left hook, a straight right hand down the pipe, and dip off to the left, because he was too quick for the shits. His reflexes was God given, and he also had power and had high IQ. But the thing is that he had a solid foundation built by his pops and his uncle, and that allowed him to break rules. So when you have the skills, you have the freedom, right? And that's what my boot camp teaches that COPET method. That's what the COPET method teaches, and that's what I teach in the boot camp as well. COPET met COPET method gives you the skill to have the freedom to do whatever you want, because when you are connected with these different type of techniques, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, through composition, through storytelling and composition, it's not going to leave you. It doesn't leave you. It doesn't leave you. When you get into, like I stated before, you've been practicing arpeggios, and you cannot get from here to there without making mistakes. And you're hitting your head on the wall. Boom, 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 boom. You don't know what to do. You get more and more frustrated. Take my boot camp. That's gonna help you. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I think I'm gonna jump off of this. So, for anybody interested in the boot camp, DM me the word mastery, and I will see if you're a great fit for the boot camp, for the consultation, or the free consultation, and see if you'd be a great fit for the boot camp. Take care. Love y'all. I'm gonna holler at y'all later.